Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I don't like to be doom and gloom, and yet I know sometimes when I do environmental shows, those shows end up being somewhat doom and gloom. But I do that because I try to get across this thing of, oh my god, this is a big deal. We're talking about something that's cataclysmic from the standpoint of the entire world. Something needs to take place. We need to make changes in the way that we live our lives. I've gone through one thing after the next, one slide, or you can call it article after the next, getting this point home. That there's a flaw in the way we go about our affairs. 20,000 scientists give dire warning about the future in a letter to humanity, and the world is listening. The world is not listening. Sperm counts in the West plunge by 60% in 40 years as modern life damages men's health. Climate change, making foods, crops less nutritious, research finds. Essentially, putting a bunch of carbon in the atmosphere does essentially what putting a bunch of sugar into us. It creates, it makes it like junk food. It's like in the same way that crops absorb and eat carbon. Yes, it absorbs and eat carbons, but it has this kind of weird side effect of making the crops less nutritious. Our food has been getting less nutritious year after year after year after year. And scientists are finding that, hey, it's the climate's stupid. It's essentially what we're pumping into the air is affecting us down below. Let's keep going. Earth lost half of its wildlife in the past 40 years. Exxon knew about climate change almost 40 years ago. A new investigation shows the oil company understood the science before it became public issue and spent millions to promote misinformation. Why would they do that? That's interesting. Why would they do that? They do that because they understood that revealing that would adversely affect their business model. That if you're telling the world, hey, something our business is doing is damaging life on this planet and may make life on this planet unsustainable, they may regulate you. They may do something about that. They may switch to other energies that are not necessarily as damaging to the environment as this particular industry. They shut up because it was profitable for them to shut up. The climate change model, or the capitalistic model, acts as if it's a real thing. It's not a real thing. It's just a system that we function in. It acts as if it's such a real thing to such a degree that people in the system itself are incentivized to allow the destruction of the system itself if that means they can essentially maximize their profit on the way out. That's the system that we've ended up wrangling ourselves into. Jet stream affected by climate change. Scientists say a fluctuating jet stream may be causing extreme weather events, but they're also making this point of climate change may be adversely affecting the jet stream. They don't necessarily know. I've seen other reports saying that it was. This is a plan that these guys had to avert climate change disaster with technology that didn't exist. The amazing part of this entire article is right here. Today, the vast future sector of the economy amounts to one working project in the world, a repurposed corn ethanol plant in Decatur, Illinois, which is a question: has the world come to rely on imaginary technology to save it? They're talking about clean coal. They're talking about clean coal. Capitalists trying to come up with a way to keep their capitalistic lifestyle in place while the world falls apart around them. And here's this one. Salt. Plastic in your sea salt. Just plastic in your salt. We've thrown so much plastic in the oceans that there is now plastic in your sea salt if you're eating sea salt. And then we come to this guy. We're doomed. Mayor Hillman on the climate reality no one would dare mention. Essentially, we're fucked. There's nothing we can do. It's not so much that there's nothing we can do. That's not really true. The catch is there is nothing we're going to do. There's a difference in those things. People pretending as if there's going to be some magic technology that pops out the box that all of a sudden save us from our failures. There is not. There is no magic door. There is changing how we go about our affairs in order to make this work, in order to fix this. And this is systemic. Having you throw cans away is quaint, but that doesn't solve the issue. Having your government say, somewhere like for Britain, for example, where he is, hey, we need to get cars and we need to make sure people use public transportations more. I'm sorry, Britain is not the problem. There are plenty of other nations that are more so the problem with regards to climate change. The issue is global, and that's kind of the issue. Real change, substantive change, is going about the way we organize our affairs and how we go about our processes. We give corporations, or oil money, billions of dollars. These are the worst, shitty industries with regards to putting climate change in or creating climate change. Animal agriculture is the other driver on this. Are you willing to go vegetarian? I know a lot of my listeners are. I've tried. I've failed on more than one occasion of going for it because I've been a carnivore for the past 30, 40 years. I'm talking about hard changes that need to be taking place or need to take place. These guys are looking for a magic door, as if some magic technology is going to spring out of the woodwork. Yeah, you're waiting for something. You're waiting for butterflies and rainbows. The reality of it is we have the capacity to change the way we organize our affairs. Even if it's something as small as saying we're going to invest trillions of dollars into capturing or into putting a carbon tax. That would do something. Like the climate change accord that they're talking about is tepid and quaint, but it doesn't really quite hit at the issue. All of these environmentalists who are pushing at the oil companies and everything else, you will never win that fight. The reason you will never win that fight is because you're fighting the wrong fight. Your issue is with the capitalistic system itself. If those oil companies are incentivized to put billions of dollars and buy billions of dollars, they're going to put those pipelines up. They don't care how many Native Americans are praying. They're going to put those pipelines up. And your Democratic president is going to go behind it and put those pipelines down in the same way your last Democratic president did. In the same way this woman was selling fracking, who was running for the Democratic Party, while at the exact same time saying an asteroid was going to hit the planet. The Democratic policy doesn't make sense. The Republican Party policy is nuts. One party says, yes, there's an asteroid that's going to hit the planet, but we're not really going to change any way we go about our affairs. We're going to make tepid changes around the edges. Obama was still pushing fracking. Hillary Clinton was still pushing fracking all around the world. Both of those things are horrible within the standpoint of methane leaks. Scientists are pushing this thing of a 2% change, 2-degree change. They have no idea what that model is going to look like. They're assuming that their model is going to just kind of go a particular way. There could be gaps or jumps in the methane leaks, especially when we're talking about destroying the Arctic. This is catastrophic. Everybody wants to pretend as if there's something we can do. And yeah, maybe there is something that we can do, but no, we're not going to do it. There's a difference in those things. Yes, if you had a public that was sane and rational and say, yes, we believe scientists for all these other things about the universe and the world and everything else, but on this one specific thing, oh, it cuts too close. Telling me I need to stop eating hamburgers cuts too close. Telling me that we need to change in the way we organize our affairs, in the way that we drive, in the way we use public transportation. Oh, that cuts too close. Cuts too close. There is an asteroid that's about to hit the planet, and your economic system can't accommodate the fact that there's an asteroid that's about to hit the planet. Meaning there's a real reality. The capitalistic system pretends as if it's a real reality. I don't argue with people about economic models because I find it to be a ridiculous argument. Let's argue about real things. And if we're not arguing about real things, there's no point. A real thing is there's an asteroid that's about to hit the planet. Now, whatever economic system you talk about, if you're talking about capitalism, whatever, it needs to be able to accommodate and change to deal with the fact that there's an asteroid that's about to hit the planet. And if it doesn't, then your model fails. Your model caused that asteroid to hit the planet, and now your model has nothing to do about the asteroid. It doesn't even want to acknowledge that it exists, also known as ExxonMobil. Look, all I'm saying is this is a big fucking deal. We should look at this as if there's an asteroid that is about to hit the planet, and what you want to marshal in regards to your resources and your intellectual acumen and all this other stuff to handle with that, to deal with that situation. And none of that is taking place. The Paris Accord, again, is quaint. But nobody want to own up to the fact that the public in the world is not willing to do what's necessary to deal with this particular issue. And yeah, I do mean mass changes in the way we organize our affairs. Even if you take out the Animal Act, even if you just deal with the infrastructure part, especially with the United States, the thing with cars and public transportation and all of the other stuff, it'll make a big difference. So let's take a listen to this guy. We're doomed. Mayor Hillman on climate reality no one would dare mention. We're doomed, says Mayor Hillman, with such a beaming smile that it takes a moment for the words to sink in. The outcome is death, and it's the end of most life on the planet because we're so dependent on burning fossil fuels. There are no means of reversing the process, which is melting the polar ice caps, and very few appear to be prepared to say so. Essentially, they're not owning up to the truth. The reality of this is we're ill prepared to change. We know this is coming. The scientists are saying this is getting worse, and we're ill prepared to do anything about it. And we keep holding out this 2-degree, number when we're scheduled to hit like 3 degrees if we continue to go the way we're going. And there's nothing to show that we're changing course. There have been some places that have been doing clean energy. That is true, but we're talking about a mass renovation in our affairs, and that doesn't seem to be happening. Hillman, the 86-year-old social scientist and senior fellow emeritus at the Policy Studies Institute, does say so. His bleak forecast of the consequences of runaway climate change, he says, without fanfare, is his last will and testament. His last intervention in the public life. I'm not going to write anymore because there's nothing more that can be said, he said when I first heard him speak, stunned audience at the University of East Anglia late last year. From Malthus to Millennium Bug, apocalyptic thinking has a poor track record. But when it issues from Hillman, it may be worth paying attention. Over nearly 60 years, his research has been factual data to challenge policymakers' conventional wisdom. In 1972, he criticized out-of-town shopping centers more than 20 years before the government changed planning rules to stop their spread. In 1990, he recommended halting the closure of branch line railways. Only now are some closed lines reopening. In 1984, he proposed energy ratings for houses, finally adopted as government policy in 2007. And more than 40 years ago, he precisely challenged society's pursuit of economic growth. When we met at his converted coach house in London, his classic Doyer racer still parked hopefully in the hallway, a stroke and triple heart bypass mean he is currently forbidden from cycling. Hillman is anxious we are not sidetracked by his best-known research, which challenged the supremacy of the car. We're doomed ahead. Making a case for cycling as a primary mode of transport is almost irrelevant, he said. We've got to stop burning fossil fuels. So many aspects of life depend on fossil fuels except for music and love and education and happiness. These are things which hardly use fossil fuels, are what we must focus on. Our society's failure to comprehend the true cost of cars has informed Hillman's view on the difficulty of combating climate change. But he insists that I must not present his thinking on climate change as an opinion. The data is clear. The climate is warming exponentially. The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change predicts that the world on its current course will warm by 3 degrees by 2100. Recently revised climate modeling suggests the best estimate of 2.8 Celsius. But scientists struggle to predict the full impact of the feedback from the future of such methane being released from the melting permafrost. Hillman is amazed that our thinking rarely stretches beyond 2100. This is what I find so extraordinary when scientists warned about the temperature could rise to 5 degrees or 8 degrees Celsius. What? And stop there? What legacies are we leaving for the future generations? In the early 21st century, we did a good as nothing in response to climate change. Our children and grandchildren are going to be extraordinarily critical. Think about what he's saying. He's like, you have a legacy that you're leaving back to your kids and your grandkids, and you're leaving them a planet that's on fire. They're going to look back on us and say, those people knew and didn't do squat about it. Even it was clear, even when it was relevant, even it was happening in their lifetimes, they just stood by and did nothing. Saying the capitalistic system is God, and we can't do anything within this capitalistic system to change the reality outside of some kind of technological solution. When the solution is as apparent as the nose on your face. Reorganize how you go about your affairs. And it doesn't have to be an overall reorganization. What I mean, though, is investing heavily by the trillions, meaning world governments, in energy infrastructure by itself will change dramatically. Even if the governments put on this kind of carbon tax, 90%, they said, they came up with a stat, 90% of the carbon that's put into the atmosphere is not taxed. That's something that's hitting you and me and adversely affecting each and every person on this planet. That should be taxed. That money should be used for other things like clean energy and everything else, but whatever. I'm making the point that it should be a disincentive to use certain energies while the governments are incentivizing using others. Even then it may be too late, but at the very least you will be doing something to acknowledge that there's an asteroid that is about to hit the goddamn planet. I mean, come on. Let's keep going. Global emissions were static in 2016, but the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was confirmed by 400 parts per million. The highest level for at least 3 million years. The sea levels were up to 20 meters higher than now. Concentrations can only drop if we emit no carbon dioxide whatsoever, says Hillman. Even if the world went to zero carbon today, that would not save us because we've gone past the point of no return. Essentially, we're cooked. Although Hillman has not flown for more than 20 years as part of a personal commitment to reducing carbon dioxide emissions, he is now scornful of individual action, which he described as good as futile. By the same logic, says Hillman, national action is also irrelevant because Britain's contribution is minute. Even if the government were to go to zero carbon emission, it would make almost no difference. Now, people joke me for saying this, because I tell my wife, there's no point in recycling. I know it makes you feel good, but it's not really doing what I think you think it's doing. It goes beyond just the individual actions. He's making a point that Britain, even if everybody in Britain was bicycling, Britain's contribution to the climate change thing is minute compared to other nations like America and China and India. Let's keep going. Instead, says Hillman, the world population must globally move to zero. Emissions across agriculture, air travel, shipping, heating homes, every aspect of our economy, and reduce our population too. Can it be done without a collapse of civilization? I don't think so, says Hillman. Can you see everyone in a democracy volunteering to give up flying? Can you see the majority of the population becoming vegan? Can you see the majority of agreeing to restrict the size of their families? And this is my point. And this is why I think he's right. Like, we're looking for a magical door. And they're telling you, look, the world is coming to an end. What are you willing to give to protect the world from coming to an end? And people are like, that's a toughie. That's a toughie. I mean, I'd give up flying, but I have family that's in this other state. I'll give up eating meat, but fuck, man, I've eaten meat for like 40 years. It's not the easiest thing to do. I mean, I'll try. I mean, I'll do my best. Who's going to give up this stuff? What democracy is willing to give up this stuff? What people are willing to give up this stuff? And here's another thing. Your system itself incentivizes against these things. Meaning, if somebody came up and said, we're going to limit the size of X or we're going to limit the size of Y, that person would be attacked for political stunt, even if the person was right in what they were saying. He's right. Nobody's going to give up these things. Nobody's going to willingly give up these things. And it's not on a list or even talked about. It's not even talked about. It's grim, I know. Let's keep going. It's almost done. Hillman doubts that human ingenuity can find a fix and says there is no evidence that greenhouse gases can safely be buried. But if we adapt a future with less, focusing on Hillman's love and music, it might be good for us. And who is we, asks Hillman for the typically impish smile. Wealthy people will better be able to adapt, but the world population will head to regions with the planet such as Northern Europe, where they would temporarily be spared the extreme effects of climate change. How are these regions going to respond? We see it now. Migrants will be prevented from arriving. We will let them drown. This is the hellscape we've created. This is the hellscape that is incentivized to propagate itself. Capitalism, whatever you want to think of it, is like a water in a stone. If there's money that can be made by strangling a baby, there'll be money made by strangling a baby. Now, the laws themselves will come up and say, hey, it's bad to strangle babies. But if there's a black market for strangling babies, somebody will be there to do it because somebody will be paid handsomely to do it. It's like water in a stone. The weak spots, it will find those weak spots and it will try to trickle its way down into the thing. That's actually the strength of capitalism, but that's also the weakness of capitalism from the standpoint of the wider civilization. They're doing things to make a profit. And making their profit, it is a pain in the ass to deal with this reality of climate change, so they don't deal with that particular reality of climate change. They're trying to come up with some kind of capitalistic solution where they can make a buck off of saving the world. I don't know how you head off this disaster if the world doesn't even fully acknowledge that there's a disaster. And I understand, I say there's an asteroid that's about to hit the planet, but I'm saying that the response is not from the standpoint of, oh my God, there's an asteroid that's about to hit the planet. It's more so of, maybe we should do something about that, as opposed to the panic that needs to be instilled in each and every person of, yes, we absolutely need to do something about that. That's a big fucking deal. There's an asteroid that's about to hit the planet. I'm with him. I think we're cooked. So keep calm. We're already doomed. I'll go with that one. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to change it. We should. We should do everything in our powers to change it. But by the same token, we should acknowledge and at the very least recognize that we may already be fucked. Happy Saturday. Thanks, guys.